Salud, amigos.
Greetings, friends, crew member of our beloved, polluted, and unique spacecraft, which, since the last time we met, has taken another turn about its imaginary axis, and of course, continues creating events in full development. When you see him sitting down, it is because I have a guest, and we have some very, very good guests today. So don't miss this show and let everyone know, because this is an unmissable show. You will see why. I will start welcoming our guests and introducing them according to their age. So I will start then with General Roberto Gonzalez Cárdenas, Brigadier General of the Army in active reserve situation, Doctor in Security of the Nation by UNEFA, National University of the Armed Forces, Master in Science and Military Arts, Master in Administration, a Diploma in Continental Defense, as well as one in Major State number 32, a degree in Science and Military Arts, with every course required by the Military Academy, professor, teacher for 33 years in national universities, commander of 411 Battalion, commander of Unit in Border 1983. And we also have
Vladimir Adrianza Salas,
Master in Foreign Affairs from the Institute of High Studies of National Defense, a doctorate in Development of Security of UNEFA, a degree in Administration, IT Engineer, researcher in postgrad of Studies of National Defense and High Diplomatic Studies Pedro Wall, professor of the Central University of Venezuela and of the Catholic University Andrés Bello, with classes about economics, geoeconomics, oil, and energy. He is a journalist just like myself, a general, editor of the 180 ICQ. Oh, ICQ. It's not C, it's a Z, a SAT. So this would be India Zulu Quebec in military terms. However, how would you introduce it? 180 degrees left. International analyst. And I think that after this brief introduction, we can start the show that will create some very interesting events. And I'm pretty sure about this, General. Due to your hierarchy, you're the one who will open the show. Thank you very much, Walter, for the invitation once again to your show. Both the professor and myself. Well, I'm speaking about hierarchy. So, I'm a teacher in the UNEFA, and I would like to greet all the family of UNEFA, and the rector mainly, and all the military family there as well. Our family, yes, it is our family. It's an honor being here in your show, and today we're going to speak about fundamental aspects that are taking place throughout our border, the border in Venezuela. From a particular point of view, Professor Vladimir also has a very interesting part that we need to pay attention to about the things happening with Colombia. Let me say in front of the cameras that this hasn't been prepared, and it's going to be spontaneous, and you will be able to handle the show as you like, and I will try to enjoy and intervene at some point as well. First of all, we need to locate the public, the audience, in the Venezuelan border. When we see the map next to us, there are events that are taking place in our border, and we need to start thinking about our border to the west, in the border with Colombia. And throughout the border, last week in your show, we were speaking about the different events that were taking place throughout the Catacumba zone. And here I have some slides and sheets just to clarify certain events. So, camera one, please, can you point this? Please here? Okay. That's perfect. Excellent. Okay, so throughout our border, in the Zulia and Táchira states, both of them. However, we're going to speak specifically about what's happening in Catatumbo in the Colombian side and also in the Venezuelan side. Additionally, there are certain matters that could be considered interesting in this area, provided that here there's been a mobilization of people, a great amount of people from the Colombian side. They come from the north of Santander, with all the fundamental aspects related to this area that have moved, with indigenous communities, farmers, and even members of the FARC, of the ELN. They have been mobilized towards the Venezuelan side. Now, you could wonder, why are all these people moving? And after our research, we have been able to find that all this area, that this region, according to the record and our information, we have 10,000 hectares of coca in the past. However, now we have 25,000, but not on our side, on the Colombian side. However, there are some crops in Venezuela as well. So there's the Sierra operation here in order to clean the motilón, to clean it from coca crops. And according to the information that we have been able to find that the Mexican drug cartels, once again, we're speaking about Mexican drug cartels, have moved and established throughout the Venezuelan border, of course with Colombia. So they establish their places and speak about coca lips, not about processed coke. Well, they say that they are creating certain pools which are filled with coca leaves, with gasoline, with cement. So this is the process required in order to create the coca paste. And based on the information we have, the best coca paste in the world is being manufactured in this part of the border with Venezuela. That's why they're bringing fuel or gasoline from Venezuela to Colombia. So we should reactivate the Sierra operations, and we should start there, in this bordering zone. Now, they, of course, displace Colombian families, and they take them towards the Colombian side. So who is going to pick up the coca leaves? So they're looking for farmers, for people coming from Venezuela, those who work in Ceboruco, in other areas, in all this area here, which is the south of Zulia. And they pay them in Colombian pesos. Of course, for them it is better. So Venezuelans go there, and they start taking the leaves out of the plants. So this must be managed from the point of view of military intelligence. I have been working in this area in the past, and this is a very warm area. So it's very, very difficult to differentiate which area is Colombia and which one is Venezuela. So it's a diffuse area in order to determine whether it's Venezuelan or Colombian. But in the north, this is clearly defined, and we clearly know that in the Sierra, there's that deep forest, and they have increased the number up to 25,000 hectares, but we need to know how much we have in Venezuela as well. So we need to start once again with Sierra operations in this area. If we go to the south of our country, we will be able to find and realize that in the south of Venezuela there is a red alarm, and it is here, and it comes from the institutions of the Colombian government with regards of the Meta River that are in the border. Here it's Meta, and here we have the so-called Nerarauca, Venezuelan and Colombian, and all the rivers there have a higher water flow, and we know that the water flow is bigger this year as well. I even have some pictures that show areas that are completely flooded throughout all the border. And if we are to focus in this corner with the three states, the Amazonas, the Apure, and the Colombian state, so there's even a loss of the place where the ferry transports cars. It's a ferry that takes cars from one place to the other. And it comes from Puerto Burro to Puerto Paez. And we clearly know that when rivers are flooded, when all this area is flooded, well, in the river, that's road. And the road will basically disappear by water because it's a floodable area. And it's very vulnerable, and even the livestock is taken upwards due to this. And now we're going to speak about something in particular that's happening to the south of Venezuela. So what is happening here? Logically, here in the south of Venezuela, I would like to very responsibly state the following. We have seen a movement. We're going to alert the authorities of Venezuela, the people of Venezuela. So there's a movement here that, according to the information that we hold, it's going to take the Amazonas state, the Bolivar state, and the Temagura state. So almost 54% of the national territory. So now, how is this happening? We wonder. So here I have the information. Allegedly, all this area here, it is going to become, well, and this is a very important alert, because there's a movement of the Pemón community. I spoke about the Venezuelan nation. Our Constitution, on Article number 10, Article number 10 and 11, clearly speaks about our nation, our geographic space, about our territory, and the geographical space in Article 10, Article 11, and this is where we study this. But starting with Article 1, it states that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and then it states, has the unwaivable right of the independence, immunity, sovereignty, integration, territorial integrity, and self-determination nationwide. These are rights of the Venezuelans. Then, of course, if we speak about a transfer movement taking place in these zones, of the Pemona community, appealing to the right of the creation of the indigenous motherland, who clearly know that behind this great movement that is taking place to the south, well, there's a church. It's not a Catholic church, of course. It's the Adventist Church of the Seventh Day. In 2005, Commander Chavez asked for the new tribes of Venezuela to come out. Did they go out? Well, I would like to tell my people that they didn't leave Venezuela. They just changed their name. So now there's an Adventist church in the Bolivar state with 139 quarters for this Adventist church. We can also find it in the Amazonas. We also have the Philadelphia Church, the Pittsburgh Church in Amazonas State. So many different churches. They are churches that take the members of the communities. And I know from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and I know this because in Vista Alegre, where I live, they take these people from the Amazonas, they bring them there, they have a short insect training, and then they are brought to the doctrine. This is a brainwashing, actually, to create a doctrine of all these people. So in 1997 or 1998, I had to travel to Parimabé. This happened during Easter. And then there was a problem taking place. It was within the community of Parimba. It was because an indigenous person, well, he was with the wife of another person. This led to violence, and both of them had a concussion, and they brought an aircraft to Puerto de Cucho. But I met with a lady, and she spoke about these new tribes, and I was asking them, well, speaking about the new tribes, it's an infamous term, but they started changing, and they became part of the new tribes, and they brought in Venezuelan people. And there are a great number of conditions, including nationality and whatnot, in order to bring in, to gather all these people. And something similar is happening in the Gran Sabana. And they, of course, take away the sovereignty of our country. So then, we can see Pemones here, right? This is the Gran Sabana municipality that is composed of this area. But now the question is as follows. Why are they requesting the Amazonas state, the Bolivar state, the Tamaguro state, 54% of national territory? And who is behind all of this? The State Department is still behind the Pentagon, these churches as well, those who create this doctrine, and who create as well a change in the mindset of Venezuelans, because we are Venezuelans. The Venezuelan nation is a single one. Here we don't speak about a plurinational nation as Bolivia does, even though we know that they call itself, they call them the Pemon nation. But a nation only happens when you find that, okay, during the date of this year, on March 23, the board of direction of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had an exercise of sovereignty to provide an identity card to all the Venezuelans found in this area of the South. So they met together. They met with the captains, generals of all 8 sectors of the Pemonas communities in Gran Sabana. Captains are the leaders of these tribes. Let us clarify this. So once they met, and once this concluded, a lady, a Pemon leader called Lisalín Enrico Percy, who was born in the British Guyana. She speaks English, she speaks Spanish, she speaks Taurapan, which is native language, and also a Brazilian language. So who is she? She was trained in Maryland. Maryland, of course, United States. Okay? So with all this knowledge and the doctrine that she brings, what is behind? Of course, a fractional movement. So it goes against the nation. This is a betrayal to our land here and in any other place of the world. So she said, we are not willing to take a step back in history. She mentions that the Pemon community existed before the captaincy of Venezuela, before this, they were still there. So now, she is demanding not only the space for the Pemon community, but also the spaces in Amazonas, Bolivar, and the state of Tamaguro. Okay? So now, who is behind all these spaces about the interest in Amazonas, Bolivar, and Tamaguro? The United States, of course. So now, let's review everything that has happened within the last year and until now, during the previous years and now. We have been informed about the commander of the South Command, where the commander provided a statement saying that we cannot waive what is ours. So what is ours? Well, the Amazonas state, of course, the Bolivar state, of course, and the Tamaguro state, of course. So Colombia is trying their best to have the free navigation and to take other products through the Orinoco River, where the Meta and the Orinoco River meet, and to get a way out to the Atlantic from the Orinoco. So they want a lot. So these people want to have what we often call, well, all this area, they're keeping 54% of the national territory, even more. Why? Well, because we are including our claim over how we were stolen off the Guyana. And this person mentions that this will also be part of the new motherland. So this is an old open wound that we have in this area. So if you review all these documents from last year, from this year as well, then you wonder, why are there states? Well, it was difficult to understand. Now it is clear, and we understand, because for year 2016, they stated that Venezuela, well, a part of it was theirs. And their thesis is based that in Rio Negro, there was a big air base with this potential and strategic power that was located here. Last week, there was a piece of information where the state of Israel, or Israel, created the Jewish state with the capital in Jerusalem, of course. A place where the three greatest monotheistic religions meet, and that has an approved status of the United Nations, the same one that allowed the creation of this state. Of course, you're telling the truth, my friend. So now, let's take a look at the following. The territory that they're claiming as the new Pemon nation, or the motherland of the indigenous communities, then this lady, Lisa Lynn Enreto Percy, who was born in Guyana, we are not willing to take a step back in history. We don't acknowledge the Constitution or the laws, so they don't acknowledge our Constitution. That is what they do. So now, let's set an example about this. So who is orchestrating this? Now, let's add a little bit of more information to this data. They are creating the Pemona self-defense, and they're creating them right now. And additionally, yesterday, a National Guard accidentally ran over a Pemon person who unfortunately died. And that's not part of their command. He is not being in jail according to law. No, he's being held in the Federal Council that decided to apprehend him according to the Territory Guard of Pemon. And where is this coming from? Well, we are just expecting them to declare the motherland of Pemon. So I even have some information that states that they have already some logistics from the perspective of hospitals, of other management areas. They have medicine there already. They also have food. They have electrical plants and many other topics related to logistics about this. So who is behind all of this? Of course, there are states. Once again, there are states. Strategic minerals. What else? A strategic basis. Everything there. Once these people declare the state nation, automatically Washington will give them their blessings, and Washington will land in this airport, and it will not be the first time that the Pemon community has taken over this. There is an airport in Luepa as well, but with the Santa Legua then it's enough for them, and they have the support in San Carlos de Rio Negro for all this area. So what are we speaking about right now? Secessionism, a betrayal to the Bolivarian nation. So I am warning people, and I take responsibility over this. I would like to alert our armed forces and warn them. They are already warned, of course. And I would like to tell the Venezuelan people about this, about what's happening behind all of this. But now, What are the scenarios from a geopolitical point of view? For September, October, they're speaking about certain unitas maneuver in the front of the coast of Venezuela. And who is going to participate there? Well, different countries who are part of this. The United States, they're even bringing in the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Colombia, Guatemala, Peru, all the Lima group, and that's it. But now, this is only a distraction. This is what they want. In order to position units that will be... Let me stand up just to explain this. So here we can position Navy units. So here we are distracting them, and we're going to penetrate here. So already, whenever there's a military operation, all the elements of the army, both the ones on the air as in land of Brazil, well, they're in Roraima, concentrated there, already during this semester. So what are we speaking about here? If you position the drills here, then I will have a distraction here. So this is a hook, this is a diversion, and we have all of this. So this is under the protection and tutelage of the government of the United States of America, of course. General, you have 1 minute because I would like to allow our other friend, Vladimir, speak. Listen, so we're facing this reality. So where is this taking us to? Coalition? Indeed. I think that we need to be stronger now, and we need to bring more strength to our borders because they're throughout Venezuela, both in the western and in the south of Venezuela. And we need to become present there. We need to increase our presence. And even we spoke about creating a division in the south so they will take all our resources. Even though we have oil in Orinoco, we also have the strategic minerals there. And there are many things to be said about this. General, you've already had half an hour, and the other half an hour will be given or granted to Vladimir. Well, thank you very much, Walter, as always, for inviting us to the show. It is an honor being here. Vladimir Adrianza Salas is a figure with a lot of prestige, with his own specific acknowledgments, and I will not speak about anything during this half an hour because it's an opportunity of listening to this and learning from this. No, Walter, please interrupt me as many times as you want because what you say is not an interruption, but an input. So what I'm going to say is the following. I'm going to speak about the continuation of what was left last time. So this is the threat that Venezuela is facing on the western side. But this didn't start now. It's been there for quite a while. And it could be clearly summarized by stating that the oligarchy of Colombia for over 200 years are carrying out a process where they have done everything to keep their power, and one of their main topics are first to oppress their own people with different elements throughout history that prove this true, while the other part is that starting with drugs, and when this started in the 50s, 60s, and of course in the present, has led to a conflict that's been there for over 60 years. And beyond the recent peace negotiation of 2016 hasn't ended. And based on the things that you have said in the program, it has been clear that the conflict is still there. However, they have decided to give up their own sovereignty. So when we speak about the oligarchy, And when we speak about Marulanda, who was the boss of FARC, once he was asked about the moment when the conflict started in Venezuela, he said it started with the death of General Sucre. The death of General Sucre affect them, and with Bolivar. And of course, the attacks against Bolivar, there were many. Well, it's great that you use the plural in this case, because there were, of course, more than one. And then Walter, to make this short due to our time constraints, the incident of the murder of the workers in the banana plantations of the United Plantation Company, the infamous event, yes, it is sadly very famous, and the Colombian army was the one who massacred these workers because the United States had threatened to bring Marines to Colombia. So then, this led to the death of Gaitán, Jorge Eliezer Gaitán, who defended the cause of these events that were caused in this community, which of course created the process of the internal war of Colombia that had different stages. First, negotiations where a new constitution was created in the 70s, and many of the leaders of M19 were literally killed, murdered, and you have mentioned this in the show about Juan Carlos Galán. You even have some interesting events happening with him. Well, he told me the last time we met, the last time we shared the table, he told me, I am all in. I am against all these shameful events, against all this corruption, everything that my country is under. And I told him, you know what this can cost you? And he says, yes, but I am all in. But if I don't do this, then here is my card and this is my number. There was no way to stop him. He was going against everything. And then he was killed from the back. So there was how he was killed. It was impossible not to have him killed. And the death of Galán and many other people who came from M19 and were presidential candidates were then succeeded by the attempt of mobilization of other groups, where they killed the case of Unión Patriótica, and according to Piedad Córdoba, around 6,000 people were killed. 5,000 or 6,000 people were killed. And then the institution of hired gangs was founded in Colombia. They killed Galán and they killed other people as well. And this organization of hired gangs then created an opening to the militia. And the militia started with Uribe, Dr. Barito, another infamous character of history. And it comes with all these events. And then there is an institution in order to create the militia of the right wing and their goals within the Colombian nation, but their objectives today, of course, also affect the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And it's been mentioned many times that there are militiamen here in Venezuela too. This leads to a fact. When Uribe became president, candidate number 92 or 82 of the DEA in the 90s, he was drug trafficker number 82 for the DEA. So what called the attention of the people were the events that took place with Uribe. Well, before Uribe, there was Pastrana with Plan Colombia. And after that, the Nation Plan or Plan Patriota, which took place after Pastrana with Uribe. But all of these plans, well, they really call our attention because they have created many American bases. We don't know exactly how many are there. Well, it doesn't matter right now because they have granted them all their sovereignty. And as Paul Coverdale spoke, and I've said this many, many times, he said, in order to control Colombia, to control Venezuela, Colombia must be occupied militarily. And they did this, Walter. But Additionally to doing this, they have also developed a continuity with all of this, and the operations of drug traffic operations have grown in Colombia. And in Colombia, according to the United Nations, between 2015 and 2016, the production of coca leaf have increased this, as well as coca paste and cocaine and even heroin before. And we believe that it was only in Afghanistan, but now we know that the main producer of the hemisphere is right next to us. So this leads us to believe. So that's a very, very hard drug, very, very, very hard drug. And it is a drug that has a very clear connection, and we're going to see this in the maps that I have brought. So they have that connections with something that was mentioned by Daryl at the beginning, which are the Mexican drug cartels. But we also need to understand something that was stated by Cristina Fernandez, the former president of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez. These are the sources where we have taken the data from. So we haven't made them up. They come from the United Nations sources. Many of them are based on the United Nations and Colombian information as well. And then we continue little by little with details. And this brings us to believe that a great deal of the drug process that with Cristina Fernandez, well, around 20%, we're going to see this shortly. 20 to 1% of the drug price that comes from Colombia is the amount that's kept in Colombia. The rest comes from Mexico and the United States. And then this happens within the economic system of the States. So that's why today we can see that the drug mechanisms have a very important role related to dollar, because the dollar is the currency behind, or the currency sought by drug traffickers in order to carry out their operations. And this is all related to a fact that is also happening here in Venezuela. And what is happening here in Venezuela is that for almost 100 years, Venezuela was implanted with a model which was the oil business, with government and then others, with reform of the hydrocarbon law with Medina and the creation of the Development Fund of Venezuela, which was basically for the oligarchy of our country. And then after that, there was a very interesting detail, and it is the fact that at the beginning of 1945, Venezuela was defined from abroad as a country producer of oil, and that's it. So after World War II, it was their only role. We helped them win the war. But before that, in the Chapultepec conference in Mexico, this is where it took place, and Venezuela was allocated with the role of being an oil exporter. So with oil, Venezuela is going to win the next year. Of course, they were going to win the Sixth War the following year. And dear Walter, during all this time, the national oligarchy have enjoyed well. First, all the boom of the American companies since the 80s, and ever since, the profit of oil is the main objective of all the companies that were in Venezuela, both national and foreigners. Here, remember that there was a voice stating that the Creole Conference of Oil, and Amado Pernilla, who was the creator of this. And this is part of the things of those of us who aren't as young. Remember that then in the future, this all brings us to understand that for many years, with President Chavez, the representatives of Chavez were the owners of banks and central possessions of a country in order to somehow bring this profit and recycle it. So then President Chavez, in 2012, when he was already ill, he stated there were over $300 billion of Venezuela abroad. And I am pretty sure that we are not the owners of this money. And this amount of money was related to the cycle, the oil cycle that the prophets of oil had created in the hands of whom? Those who took over this profit. This was broken once again. Well, the first time there was the debt of the nation with the banks, and then Venezuela lost the possibility of recovering their foreign debt. And the second cases with the fall in 2014, when Obama decreased the prices of oil, and the prices reached $22 a barrel. And this led to a stoppage in the amount of dollars that Venezuela often has. And this is what the oligarchy has been used to, taking advantage of. First with Ricardo, then with Khadib, and then with Sequoia, and all of them. This dollars, this money. And of course, before the events taking place, and with an organization and certain economic groups, in order to capture these oil dollars. But then, the oil dollar was smaller and cheaper. So now, where are they looking for this money? Well, they're looking for it in Colombia. And Colombia is following the script mentioned by Cristian Fernandez. There are two ways of keeping accountability. So there are two payment balances. First, the normal economy of Colombia, so traditional companies, and they have over 11 free trade agreements and so on. And then the economy of drugs, which of course it's not part of any public registration, and together with the grant given to states, as stated by William Clark, who wrote this book many years ago, who mentioned there were three countries that were financed by their states. One of them was Israel, the first of them all, and then the second one was Egypt back then, and the third one was Colombia. So all these subsidies granted by the states, now it's Israel and Colombia, only those two. That's why Colombia see this. That's why they want to take advantage of this. And they have many factories inside as well. And this is part of the things that should be tackled at some point. There even was a fourth landing. Whenever there's a fourth landing, you stay by the side of the plane. But no, they disappeared. So who was flying this Kofia plane? Well, this is a very good question to ask. I am sure it wasn't someone born here in our land. So it really calls our attention. I was threatened for saying this. Weren't you, huh? Well, Walter, all of us will receive threats about this. It was great when I was invited to the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and there was a beautiful debate, but I will not be speaking about this right now. Producers, if they can be called as such in Venezuela, so extraction trafficking has become the mechanism for exports of Venezuelan products. So where are they going often? Well, to the islands, but mainly to Colombia. And why? Because there's financing in pesos that 4 years before there were 4 bolivars per peso, now it's 0 point something. So all this process that has taken place just to hit the currency of Venezuela, behind has the dollar. There's a dollar that comes from drug trafficking. And the reason why is, well, if you take Venezuelan currency and you bring it there, they will buy it for 4 times the value it has here. So what's the reason behind this if it's not drug trafficking and extraction trafficking? And another thing mentioned, well, it was stated that Colombia has started importing rice and corn. So an agricultural country since the past is now importing corn and rice. So the answer is clear and easy. They have on the one side, we will soon So they have imported corn and rice. And as you can see in the screen, corn producers tell the government of Santos that he basically destroyed them. Imports of corn and other and other products from Colombia. So where is this coming from? Well, it's coming from our country with this type of things. And the essential objective of the national oligarchy was not to have believers and strengthen them, or create in Venezuela a state that would allow to meet the needs of their population as well as the growth of their industrial producers. No, they want to take the money out and put it in foreign banks. But how? Well, in other types of currency. And they are the ones that we don't have right now in Venezuela. So they have to come from abroad, and they come from drug trafficking. And why? Well, the money that reaches the States is according to the exchange rate of the Republic, and then is brought to the border to do this source. Well, an American source said that it's difficult to find a $100 bill without traces of cocaine. Well, this is very, very hard to hear. And if we add this, the presence of the Mexican drug cartels, undoubtedly we can see that this is the case of a corporate operation by which Venezuela, with dollar Cucuta, this is not the dollar today, this is how we should call it. They have created a process by which, taking advantage of the weakness, temporary weakness that the oil prices have nowadays, and today with everything has been done by the states of blocking the economy of Venezuela, and undoubtedly they are trying to hit Venezuela on this side. First, making it suffer, then with a psychological operation, stating that Venezuelans must leave because there are no opportunities for the youth, and then if we add details as our general just mentioned, then this all tends to bring us to think that this is an operation to dismember the Venezuelan state, and in this process that has been created by the economic coup that was created from there to here. Of course, with people that come from this country that also have this interest, as it was mentioned by someone whose name, by Professor Colonna, I just remembered his name, in Jose Vicente Rangel program, who said that undoubtedly we need to understand that we need to take actions in order to become better, and this means that the companies, that bigger companies, well, they don't have any intention of bringing support to Colombia, to Venezuela. They just want to overthrow President Maduro, to go against the constitution of Venezuela, and also to carry out the same dynamic they had before of taking advantage of selling natural resources to hide their inefficiency from the productive perspective. So this is a long operation according to what we believe, and it's not an isolated one. It is a joint operation, and it's a multi-factor war where there are different elements at stake, and there's different events that are required in order to apply this operation in Venezuela and to dismember a state or nation, as was mentioned by the general, which is created by the state and the civil society in our case. So in order to dismember Venezuela from the perspective of their society and their territory and their potential. So we have enough elements, and if we see the slides, we will be able to see the details. And it calls our attention, as I said at the beginning, that in this case, the Colombian oligarchy, please go back a couple of slides. Two back. Okay, so the Colombian oligarchy, well, they have worked, according to Piedad Córdoba, well, it has been managed as a bloody oligarchy against their own people, as one of the most dangerous of Latin America. And all of this leads us to think that in order to achieve this, they have kept, they have sold. This is very important. Here, Oxfam, according to what was said in this program, it was stated that 81% of the lands in Colombia belong to 1% of the population of the country. 1%. 1%. 82% for 1%. Yes, 82% for 1%. If we understand that there are 8 million hectares that have been taken away from farmers, then in the following slide, we'll be able to see that according to Piedad Córdoba, the statistics show around 7 and 8 million internal refugees in Colombia. This is the case of false positives and other cases that I have spoken about already. And could you please speak Casa de Pique? Well, this is a house where they bring someone to kill them, cut off their limbs, they cut their body in pieces, and this is what is called. So it's just a slaughterhouse, but instead of having cows, there are human beings. So this is part of the practice of the militia. So now, they do this privately instead of publicly as they used to do before. So this is, of course, something that goes against human rights, and I don't see the state doing anything against this. Why would they go against this if they go together? Well, this is where we want to go. So what will happen then? In the following slide, the one of the corn producers who demand census because they are bankrupt right now. And according to the following slide, according to Piedad Córdoba, yes, these are the numbers. 60,000 people disappeared in the hands of the militia. And since 2016 until now, there are over 300 social leaders who have been killed after the peace agreement. After the peace agreement, yes, after the peace agreement. What a cruel irony. Yes, 318 dead, according to the last records that we know of. But in the next slide, well, this slide shows and states that coca plantations in Colombia increased from 96,000 hectares to 146,000 in 2016. And we have to say that President Trump, when he welcomed Santos in Washington, spoke about this. He even said this. He said it was unacceptable. But of course, there's 52% from 2015 to 2016, and then when we see the next slide in the map, well, this is the map of the United Nations. It's the Office of the United Nations Against Crimes and Drugs, and we're going to see clearly here in Venezuela that the green, the red, the orange colors, and also the lighter yellow, mainly the red one, show the territory has been permanently affected by crop areas. And based on what the general said before me, when we see this map, please go back to the previous slide. Okay. You can see that in the border with Zulia and Táchira, there's a red area. And there are other colors next to it. The red area means that there are coca plantations for over 10 years in this area. So if we skip over to the next slide, we can see the variation in the coca crops. The variation here, and in the following slide, we can also see that throughout Zulia State and Táchira State, we have the greatest increase of the growth of these crops without contemplating in the following map that we can see. Next map, please. Just so our audience can become familiar with it.
Okay. Entonces, pero me interesa el de las bases militares, para que veamos.
Okay, so these are the military bases, and we need to see this.
Fíjate que
Here.
ese mapa dice de las, entre comillas, 7, que son muchas más, bases militares. Y de
It
la
speaks
casualidad
about
que todos esos
military
sembradíos
bases,
de
and
coca
all this
están prácticamente
coca
rodeando
plantations
las bases
are
militares que los
surrounding
Estados
the
Unidos
military
tienen en ese
bases that your
territorio.
states have here. So how is this happening?
Esos sembradíos de coca,
These
según
coca
la
plantations,
información de Naciones
according
Unidas,
to the United Nations
prácticamente están en
information,
las mismas áreas
are in the
controladas
same
por
areas
las
that are
fuerzas
controlled by armed
estadounidenses
forces of the
establecidas en
states that have been
Colombia.
established in the Colombian
Literalmente es
country.
así.
So
Entonces, uno
it's
se
literally
pregunta,
what's happening. So then you wonder, why are they 300 kilometers away from the border of Colombia? So then, for instance, in Palenquero, or in Bahía de Málaga, or in Aranda, or in the PI, don't they know that they have coca there, or in the rest? And as it was mentioned by Rosso Grimao with his analysis, let me say something. Satellites can perfectly detect coca plantations, and American satellites often fly over their own bases in Colombia. Of course, you are right about this, and it's not only the single event. This is not about only great-scale military operations, because this is happening, and whenever there are American soldiers that have been captured bringing drugs to their states, but all of this, bringing drugs to their states, yes, of course. And a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, you spoke about a soldier that was captured, brought there, and at the end of the day, he was a drug trafficker within the armed forces of the United States. What happened with him? We don't know. I don't think that he was quite punished. Well, the presidential plane, well, there were 5 kilos of cocaine found there, but people say that it was not related, but still. We can see in this slide that around Venezuela there's a group of military bases, both in Colombia and Guyana and Suriname, and the rest of the Panama country surrounding Venezuela, the Caribbean islands, and the rest. So all this group of military bases, whenever we see the map about the drug flow, which is in the following slide. Next slide, please.
Con la idea de, por favor. Ajá, esa misma. Vemos que ese es el flujo mundial de la cocaína. Eso también lo maneja la Oficina Nacional de Naciones
and
Unidas
it's also managed
Controladora.
by the National Office of the United Nations Against Drugs. So they go from Colombia, they reach Mexico, and then the States in their great majority, then they go to Europe, and in Venezuela, they transport it from the south of the country. But this is the center, and this is the state next to it. And I know that I need to wrap up because I don't have a lot of time. Well, if 84% of land that can be planted in Colombia are property of 1% of population, this means that the core of the business of drug is managed by the Colombian side. Well, one part goes to Mexico, the other one to the States where it becomes the capital. This is part of the core business of an oligarchy that hasn't only killed their people and also waive the sovereignty of their nation and go against our national currency in order to go against Venezuela, to go against a political regime that goes against the interests of things that have been mentioned by Duque during these days after he won the elections.
y que definitivamente
and that definitely
forma parte de la ayuda que ellos dan
are part of the aid that they provide to the states in order to surround Venezuela and hitting the population, to also keep a constant attack against us, even with the support that has been given to the militia operation in Táchira, and something that we must acknowledge, which is the Balboa plan, and it's in order to secession Venezuela. So the call is plain and clear. We cannot keep our eyes wide shut facing this event. We need to act upon this. Part of the problem of the Venezuelan economy is related to the interference of Colombia to destabilize our currency. That's why we need to have a stronger currency and a currency that will allow us to overcome this event. And we can speak about this in other occasions. Yes, because we have a strategic balance between the greatest producer and the greatest consumer of drugs in the world, Colombia and the States. So time is over. I would have wanted to have much more time, General. I wanted to give you the Manual of Non-Conventional War of the States. This is published by the United States, and this is what is happening to us based on the Fifth Generation War. This is going to enrich in my collection of military topics. Yes, we need to read this and learn about many of the things that have been mentioned by Vladimir and about the things that we have stated about these operations that are being created against Venezuela. Okay, so these are, of course, eventful development, and we need to become aware of the reality we're facing. We don't want to speak about events that aren't happening. This is the cruel reality that we have against it. So we're going to see who defends our nation and who sells it. Wherever you may be, thank you for allowing us to be there with you. This was Walter Martinez. Director, the floor is all yours.